are the most common speed limits in ascending order. These apply to where I drive, Quebec, Canada, and of course, they might vary depending on where you drive, but they're usually very similar, especially throughout North America. Note that all speeds in this video are in kilometers per hour. Speeds in miles per hour are more or less 2/3 of speeds in kilometers per hour. So for example, 100 kilometers per hour is equivalent to more or less 60 miles per hour. 20 kilometers per hour, back streets or alleys because they're tight and there are often kids playing there. And parking lots, also because there tends to be a lot of movement there, both of vehicles and pedestrians. There are parking lots where it's 15 kilometers per hour or even 10. So keep this in mind if you do your exam, because most exam places are in a parking lot and these speeds are very low. You might have the impression that you're not even moving, but you'll have to respect them. 30 kilometers per hour, you'll see these a lot in school zones and near parks, especially the ones with activities for kids. When approaching one of those parks, you might see swings and other stuff for kids before you even see the speed limit panel itself. So be aware that most of the time, it'll be 30. And you'll also see them a lot in residential zones. Basically, you can see them anywhere, but these are the zones where you'll see them the most. Now, one thing I'd like to address right away is that a lot of people think that a school zone is automatically limited to 30 kilometers per hour. It's not. It's 50. That's what the law states. However, you do see a lot of school zones with 30 km per hour speed limits, most of them actually. If that's the case, it's the city or municipality that decided to lower the speed limit in that particular school zone. That usually depends on if it's an elementary or high school, the type of surrounding streets, and so on. So if you only see a panel of a school zone, but no speed limit, it doesn't mean that it's automatically 30. It can be 50 or a speed lower than 50, but not higher. When you see a panel of this shape, it means you're approaching a school zone, and when you see this shape, you're in the school zone. A little tip to remember that is that this one has the shape of a house, so you're in the zone. You've arrived home. If you see a panel in a school zone with a number on it and nothing else, it means that limit is active at all times. Some zones, however, have conditional speed limits, like here. The 30 km per hour limit in this case applies only from 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, Monday to Friday, and from September to June, which is the active school period and the times at which students get in or out of school. Sometimes lunch hour will also be included. These ones make a lot more sense, because I doubt that there will be a lot of children in school at 3 in the morning. But if you have one of these panels with no conditions on it, you still have to respect that limit at all times. Now, like I said in the previous video, in 30 km per hour zones, especially in busier streets, a lot of people tend to not respect the limit. So if you do respect it, they might get impatient behind you, and that even if you're doing your exam and they see that you're in an exam vehicle. Just ignore them. You're the one who's right and they're the ones who are wrong. And anyway, that speed limit is not only for you, it's for everybody. 40 kilometers per hour, you'll see this one a lot in urban areas, more and more nowadays, and you'll see them especially in residential zones. 50 kilometers per hour, this is the speed limit by default when driving in urban areas, the city, suburbs, and so on. That means that in zones where there aren't any panels indicating any other speed, the speed limit is 50. 60 and 70 kilometers per hour, you'll see these sometimes on urban streets, but more rarely. If that's the case, they'll usually be on wide streets with 4 lanes or more, and where there is less activity from other road users, like in industrial zones, for example. You'll also see 70 on urban highways. Since these highways go through cities, there's a lot more traffic, so the limits are lower. And you also see it a lot on service roads, those roads right next to highways. 80 and 90 kilometers per hour, you see these mostly on rural or national roads. On national roads where the speed limit is up to 90 kilometers per hour, other road users beside motor vehicles are allowed. So you might see cyclists there, pedestrians, and so on. So be especially aware of what's on the sides. But on national roads, you'll also see lots of lower speed limit zones, 70, 60, 50, and so on, depending on any particular sector of that road. For example, this is National Road 341. In this section, there's a long stretch with not much happening, so the limit is 90. Here we're approaching a town, so it's 70. Here we're going through a small town, so it's 50. So be aware that the speed limit changes often on these types of roads, depending on the surroundings. 100 kilometers per hour or over, you'll see them on highways or freeways, depending on what you call them. In other words, roads where only motor vehicles are allowed. Here in Quebec, the maximum speed is 100 kilometers per hour, but in other places it can be higher, like 120 or 130, which is something you see a lot in Europe. And in parts of some German highways, the autobahns, when you see this sign, there's no speed limit at all. Now in some places you'll also see a minimum speed, in this case 60. Unless you have some kind of emergency or vehicle problem, there's really no reason to go that slow if the traffic is all going at the maximum speed. Between 100 kilometers per hour and 60 kilometers per hour, there's a 40 kilometers per hour speed difference, and that's quite a lot. So if you're driving at 60 and somebody that's driving at 100 hits you from behind, it's the same as if you're stopped and somebody hits you from behind at 40 kilometers per hour. Basically, on the highway, try to follow the flow of traffic as long as it doesn't go over the speed limit. Where you'll see a lot of people going over the speed limit though, it's in the left lane. But even though you see a lot of people going over the speed limit in the left lane, it's still not allowed. The speed limit is the same for the whole highway, no matter what lane you're on. And another reason why you shouldn't go too slow, truckers. Truckers can't use the left lane at all, and it's forbidden to overtake on the right. So if let's say you're driving too slow on a 3-lane highway in the center lane, and there's a truck behind, since they can't use the left lane and they can't overtake on the right, sometimes they'll tailgate you, which means get out of my way, please. So if the traffic is moving at the speed limit and you don't have a valid reason to go slower, go with the flow. If you see a speed on a yellow panel like this one, it's a recommended speed, not a maximum speed. You'll often see panels like these in highway exits and before turns, and they're more important for vehicles that are higher, like buses and trucks, because their center of gravity is higher. The higher the center of gravity of a vehicle, the higher the risk of it flipping over if it's going too fast in a curve. But anyway, in a lot of turns, you should slow down anyway, panel or no panel. And if the maximum speed is indicated on an orange panel, it indicates a speed limit in a construction zone, and it's usually lower than the normal limit. That's in order to protect the workers and because there's usually a lot of activity in construction zones. Be careful with these ones. If you get a speeding ticket in a construction zone, both the demerit points and the amount of money are doubled. I'll talk about speeding fines in a future video. Now, speed limits are established with normal driving conditions in mind. So for example, if the speed limit on a road is 50 kilometers per hour, it's of course in normal driving conditions. In unusual driving conditions, for example, if the road is covered with ice or snow, 50 might be too fast. So if you're driving at that speed, you can still get a fine for that. It's called unadapted or inappropriate speed, which means driving too fast for a particular situation, even if you're not going over the speed limit indicated. It'll be at the discretion of the police officer to give you a fine or not. Where I drive, there are no specific amounts of kilometers per hour that you have to reduce in any unusual situation. You'll just need to use your judgment. In some places though, there are specific amounts. For example, in France, on highways where the speed limit is 130 in normal conditions, if it rains, the speed limit goes down to 110. But no matter if you have specific rules for that or not, always use your judgment. You might need to go at 20 kilometers an hour on the highway if the road is icy, so use your head like you should always do. I'll do a few more videos about speed soon, but the next one will be about other people's mistakes at the exam. In other words, mistakes that other people make, including road users other than motorists, like pedestrians or cyclists, that could get you to fail the exam if you don't react to them appropriately. And it's very easy to get caught in some of those. So stay tuned and see you soon.